Hello class and welcome. Today we'll be covering nutrition basics. So as we get started, I do want to point out that there is a lot of research about nutrition. I mean, it's the one thing that the majority of us do every day is eat. And so I'm going to try to keep this simple, but if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know and I will answer them to the best of my abilities. So first and foremost, remember as we go through this information, everyone is different. So just because the FDA says you should eat this way, or I say you should eat this way, or your friend says you should eat this way, doesn't mean that that is what is going to help your body perform at its best and be as efficient as it can possibly be. So you really have to remember that this requires an individualized approach, that just because you can eat ice cream doesn't mean your friend can eat ice cream. And it really depends on energy requirements. It depends on your health conditions. It depends on your gut health. And we'll touch a little bit on that, not too much because it's a whole nother science in itself. It depends on age. It depends on gender. Depends on your body type, and remember that your diet is going to change as you change. So as you grow, as you get older, as your life requirements change, your diet is going to change along with that. So please make sure to keep that in mind and just have body love as we go through this next unit on nutrition, weight management, and fitness. All right, so components of a healthy diet. There are essential nutrients. There's about 45 nutrients that we must get from food, meaning that in our diets, we want to make sure to have a variety of foods. We don't want to just eat chicken and broccoli every single day, because now we're limiting the amount of nutrients that we're getting from our food source. And when it comes to essential nutrients, that's really how we get our nutrients, is by eating, is by taking in this food via the act or the event of eating. We have macronutrients and micronutrients that are in that whole diet kind of scheme. And when we say diet, we mean diet in terms of how are you eating. We don't mean going on a diet like, what is it, the apple cider vinegar grapefruit diet that was popular for a while. We don't mean going on a diet. We mean eating in a certain way. So all of us have a different type of diet. So keep that in mind, that you are on a form of a diet. It may not just be the diet that you want to be on. So in our macronutrients, there's three components. We have protein, we have fat, we have carbohydrates, and water is extremely important. Some individuals will put water under micronutrients. Some individuals will put water in their own category. But just understand that water is so extremely important, because that's how our body can efficiently perform these different processes that it needs to perform. It needs water as a medium for those electrical currents. And if we're dehydrated, those electrical currents aren't going to work as efficiently as they could. And then on the flip side, we have micronutrients. So macros are the big ones. So if we look under a microscope, those are going to be the bigger type of cells that we see: protein, fat, carbohydrates. When it comes to micros, these are going to be our vitamins and minerals. And these are going to be extremely important, but we don't need a whole lot of them, because our body can work efficiently off just a little bit. But we do want to make sure that we're at least getting these in our diet in the different foods that we're taking in. So these nutrients are available to the body through digestion. That means eating, putting it into the body, your intestines break it down, and then your body absorbs it and uses it. An adequate diet must provide nutrients and energy to support and regulate body function. So really, the reason why we're eating is to support our body in the different functions that it needs to do in order for us to carry out the tasks that we have to do during the day. So understand that eating can be a social event, but it's just an aspect. Where we get into unhealthy habits is where we have individuals that use eating as a coping mechanism, or they start to get addicted to eating, and we'll talk about that a little later. So when we eat, our body utilizes this food in a form of kilocalories, and kilocalories is a measure of energy. Some of you may know it as more commonly calories. So when we eat, we're essentially eating to be able to produce energy to perform whatever life task that we have, whatever purpose-filled task that we have to do during the day. Now, where it gets a little unhealthy is when individuals start to just to eat, but understand that depending on your energy expenditure for the day, you may eat a lot or you may eat a little. For example, I'm not going to eat as much as what an Olympic athlete would need because I'm not producing as much energy-filled activities. Or if you're sitting inside for the summer, your eating should naturally decrease because you don't need as much energy as if you were up walking around at school all day, spending 12 plus hours a day at school, reading, writing, interacting. So all these different body processes that we have need energy. So really throw out everything you know about calories, because I'm about to bust all those myths during this lecture, and think of calories simply as a source of energy, because that's what it is. So when we talked about our macronutrients and our micronutrients, I'm going to start saying macros and micros just for short. When we talk about our macros, that's what we get energy from. Our micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals, they don't have kilocalories, so we can't get any body energy from it. But our macros, fat, protein, carbs, that's what we're able to get energy from. Each one's going to yield a different energy amount. And so that's what I have right here. So out of everything on this slide, that's what I would write down is fat is going to have about 9 calories per gram. So if you look at the back of a nutrition label, it'll say fat and it'll say, let's say 1 gram of fat. You know that from that 1 gram, you're getting 9 calories of energy from it that your body's able to use for whatever process you're doing. When it comes to protein and carbs, both are the same. There's about 4 kilocalories per gram. And that's why it's important to understand your grams. And as you get into weightlifting and things like that, a lot of individuals or health experts will count their grams because they can see this is how much energy I'm getting. So if you have a 2,000 kilocalorie per day goal, you know that as you eat, you track your fat, your protein, and carbs, you can see how many kilocalories or how many calories you're getting as you're eating these different foods. Food labels have made it easy. They put the total calories at the top, but the total calories don't tell you how many calories is from fat, how many is from protein, how many is from carbohydrates. And it doesn't really tell you the nutrient density, right? So the ratio of a food's essential nutrients to its calories is nutrient density. So how many nutrients are we getting per every bit of calories? So when it comes to weight management, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, weight management is less about calories and more about nutrient density. So keep that in mind right now. Nutrient density is how many nutrients are we getting per calories. All right, there's 6 major classes of dietary components. Again, there's proteins, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. I would actually flip this and put water on top as the most important because it's extremely important to stay hydrated in order for your body to function its best. Where we can get these individual components from, there's a list of major sources. So proteins, really important for parts of the muscles, the bones, the bloods, enzymes, hormones. We get that from meat, beef, pork, fish, poultry, eggs, milk products, legumes, which is beans, legumes, which is of course beans, quinoa, and nuts. Carbohydrates, we get a lot of those from our grains, breads, cereals. There are carbs in fruits, there's carbs in vegetables. So if you have someone that's like, I'm on a low carb diet and they're eating a whole bunch of vegetables, they're still getting carbs, right? They can't say no carb diet. They can say lower, but they can't say no carb diet. Fats, animal foods, grains, nuts, seeds, fish, vegetables. There's fats found everywhere. And we'll talk about how important fats are because it is an extremely useful energy source, especially in times of famine. Vitamins, abundant in fruits, vegetables, minerals found in most food groups. There's calciums, there's irons, there's different types that we need depending on where we're at in life. And then of course, water. Beverages include water, fresh fruits, vegetables. There's some foods that also include water, but keep in mind that if that food beverage you have, it contains a lot of sugar, then that sugar is going to take a lot of water to be able to process in your body. So yeah, you're drinking Kool-Aid, but you're not actually hydrating because a lot of that water that's in the Kool-Aid has to go to negate the effects of the sugar. All right, the digestive system, one of my favorite systems, it goes from mouth to anus. And this is where food's broken down. So food starts in the mouth. That's where chewing, mechanical digestion starts to happen. Saliva starts to get secreted and those enzymes start to break down the food. After it's all chewed into a nice mush, which you want to make sure to chew your food fully because it just makes it easier going down the esophagus into the stomach and for it to get absorbed in the intestines. As it goes down the esophagus, hits that stomach. The stomach starts to churn, hydrochloric acid breaks it down, goes into the small intestines. That's where the absorption actually starts to happen with most of our foods. So you've heard of individuals with celiac disease and things like that, where the villi aren't standing, they're actually laying down. So they're not able to absorb as many nutrients. Just because you ate the food doesn't mean your body's actually able to use it. You got it into your body, but now your body has to absorb it into the bloodstream, take it through the liver, and send the different nutrients throughout the body where it's needed. The waste, what's left, what the body doesn't want to use after going through the small intestines, hits that large intestine, comes across, comes down, and waits in the colon for you to expel it out. All right, this is a really cool video of the digestive system. It shows from beginning to end. It does have the depiction of it being a child, but they actually send the camera through an adult, so don't think that the child got injured or utilized in any way. The camera is going through an adult, but it's really interesting to see how this process that we do every single day really works in our body. So I'll give you a chance to watch that, and I'll see you when you come back. All right, now that you know how food is broken down, we're going to get into the different macro and micro components. And remember, macros are proteins, fats, carbs. Our micros are going to be our vitamins and our minerals. So the basics of body structure, this is what proteins are utilized for. And it's utilized for parts of muscle, parts of bones, part of our blood, enzymes, hormones is big, cell membrane. So we need proteins. And this is why it becomes a little difficult for vegetarians or even vegans to try to have a functioning body, is because the easiest source to get protein from is going to be our animal products. But if you don't utilize animal products, there are vegetables like legumes that you can utilize to get those proteins, but it's going to be more difficult. It's going to take a little more planning. So if that's the type of diet that you would like to be on, just understand that's going to be a challenge that you're going to have to overcome and think about. All right. Proteins are broken down to amino acids. These are going to be the building blocks of our proteins. There's 20 common amino acids, 9 essential, non-essential, but what studies are finding is that we really have 3 categories. So instead of essential, non-essential, we have essential, conditionally non-essential, and non-essential. So what that conditional non-essential is during times of systemic stress. So if someone has CVD or cardiovascular disease, if someone has a thermal injury, or it's a premature infant, or someone had surgery, these are going to be the proteins that is going to be sent for purposes of healing and not utilized for just basic body function. The essential ones we need for basic body function. Non-essential, we can have it, we cannot. The body can still survive, still function. But when it comes to the conditionally non-essential, we need them. But at the same time, if there's something traumatic going on in the body will prioritize, and it will start to send those building blocks elsewhere to help repair that site that needs to be repaired. All right, when it comes to complete proteins, all animal products are going to be complete proteins. Some plant products are going to be incomplete proteins, like legumes and nuts. So that's why I mentioned, if you're vegan or vegetarian, that legumes, nuts are going to be a staple in your diet, because again, we need to get that protein. We need to get some of those essential amino acids. And if you're not consuming these things, then your body's going without, and you're not having the building blocks that you need to repair muscle. So I know a lot of vegans, vegetarians have found that if they work out too hard, it takes them a long time to recover. And that's because in their diet, they're not including those essential amino acids. So recommended protein intake. This is based off the FDA recommendation, and understand that there's some weird science that went behind that. So again, this is an individual lifestyle choice when you choose your diet, and it's going to be based off what do you particularly need in your diet for your lifestyle. So about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, or you can look at your total daily calorie intake, about 10 to 35%. Again, athletes are going to be on the heavier side. Some individuals are even up to 50, 60% protein. Again, depends on your personal lifestyle and what you need to actually complete the task that you need during the day. All right, goals for protein, fat, and carbohydrate intake. Most of the food plates and government agencies are going to say you need majority carbohydrates in your body. Now, when we talk about carbs, we understand that that is the easiest form to break down in terms of energy for the body, but it's the quickest to burn in terms of energy for the body. So some individuals can work very well off of a high carb. It's very important to understand that your metabolism, what actually burns that energy, the functions and the processes that burns that energy, needs to be flexible. So we need to be able to burn carbs, but we also need to be able to burn fats and maybe even proteins if we need to. The body really doesn't like to burn proteins because that's the body's way of building things and repairing. So really carbs and fats is what the body preferably wants to go between, but we want to make sure that we're flexible, that if we have carbs, we can utilize those carbs, but if we don't have carbs and we only have fats, our body can still utilize those fats. All right, when it comes to protein content in certain different foods, these are just things that you can utilize to see if I'm trying to get more protein in my diet, what are some things that I should aim for to eat? Again, meats, poultry, fish, that's going to be our higher concentration. I would be careful with tofu because tofu soy is used and soy is a GMO. And for some individuals, especially females, high levels of soy or consuming a lot of soy has been found to throw your hormones off, like your estrogen levels. It's been found to change your periods, to create different types of PMS symptoms. So if your body can take soy, by all means, go for it. It's up to you. But what I found personally is that soy really doesn't interact too well with a lot of females. Men, I really don't know a lot of men that eat soy, so I don't really know the reaction to that, but I know females have had some issues with that. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, beans has a really good source. You're going to have to eat a little more of those, but again, depending on your calorie intake and need, you may not need a whole lot, maybe a bowl or so a day. Yogurt is a really good method. Cheese, some cereals have proteins in it, but remember that it's lab-made proteins. It's not going to be a natural protein, so it may not work the same in the body as you getting it from a natural food source. Eggs, the whole egg, not just the egg white, you need the whole egg. Ricotta cheese, milk, and nuts are going to be great sources of protein for you. All right, when it comes to essentials in small amounts, you can argue this one. So fats or lipids is going to be a very concentrated source of energy. So if you imagine carbs, proteins, and lipids in little packets, the fat packets are going to last so much longer because you yield more energy per gram versus from the carbs. So fats are going to be stored energy. We do have fat cells. Fat is an organ that we need to utilize for energy. Your organs themselves, your liver, your stomach, your intestines, all of those have little pockets of fat on them. And so there's no such thing as you being able to be 0% body fat. Because if you are, that means your body has no more energy to utilize to produce the body functions it needs. So we do need fats. And fats have been demonized, especially back in the 70s and 80s, as if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. That's like saying if you eat a strawberry, then you're going to turn bright red. That's not the case. Fat is totally different when it comes to nutrition versus weight management, what's actually on your body. And again, we'll talk about that during weight management. So this is going to provide insulation. Oftentimes in the winter, some of us kind of bulk up that fat store a little bit just to keep us insulated. Then the summer it kind of goes down. So fat's going to be flexible. It's going to be something that adjusts. It's going to be something that changes. What we don't want is for an accumulation of fat to continue to accumulate, especially in the midsection region, because now that's where that subcutaneous fat can start to affect our organ function and our heart, start to shift things around, and we really don't want that. Triglycerides is going to be the most fats in foods. They're saturated and unsaturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. Just understand that no matter what type of fat it is, if you're getting it from a natural source, then you'll be good. Just don't eat, for example, avocados is a great source of fats, especially when it comes to saturated fats, but don't eat 5 of them a day, right? Anything in excess can cause harm. So if you eat a half of one or one each day, or maybe every other day, you're still getting the benefits of those fats without causing any negative health effects from that. All right, when it comes to hydrogenated fats and trans fats, these are going to be our fats that are fried, that come in those really unstable oils like canola oil, safflower oil. These oils are going to be extremely dangerous, especially when heated to a high level, because now we have negative byproducts that are produced from that we're ingesting, and now that's causing oxidative stress. That's what's creating free radicals in our body that can be viewed as a toxin by the body. So if you go out and get those French fries, if you go out and get those fried chicken strips and the new fried donut chicken sandwich thing that they have out now, which is crazy. But those are going to be where our bad fats are. So when it comes to LDLs and HDLs, I'm sure everyone's heard of that. I really don't like to utilize bad or good for that, even though your author did, because there's really no bad or good. It's just a bad or good balance of the two. So generally your LDLs should be lower than your HDLs, but if both levels are extremely high or both levels are extremely low, that can be bad. You really want to be at a balance. So don't look at LDLs as bad or HDLs as good. Just understand that what is being said is that LDLs shouldn't be too high or shouldn't be higher than HDLs, and HDLs shouldn't be lower than LDLs. It really should be a nice balance where LDLs are under HDLs, the levels. But again, we don't want too high and we don't want too low. All right, recommended fat intake. This is again based off the FDA. It's going to be about 25 to 35%, but I'll admit that some individuals function better off up to 45 to 50% of their diet in fats. And again, that depends on their body type, their fitness, their health goals. That depends on their energy expenditure, and it depends on how their body works. I know for me, my body works much better off of a higher fat diet than a higher carb diet. And I find that my weight is better managed on a higher fat diet versus a higher carb diet. And it's kind of weird to think you eat more fats and you don't get more fat. Absolutely, because again, fat that you eat is different from what accumulates on your body. Those are two different things. All right, so there's different types of fatty acids, saturated, trans, monounsaturated. Where we can get this from is going to be different types of sources. So remember, we want to have an array of different types of foods in our diet. We want to have a variety, and that's what's really going to get us that broad spectrum health and wellness, is by having a variety of things. So in the saturated fats, we have animal fats, butter, cheese, dairy products, palm oil, coconut oils. I do have a lot of saturated fat sources that I get in my diet each day, including full-on fat butter. And again, my body functions so much better off of that. So I do recommend for some people to try that. Just make sure that you're in a state where you don't have any underlying health conditions, because that does change things up when it comes to diet. When it comes to the trans fats, monounsaturated fats, of course, you can see in the list where you have the frozen pizzas, the popcorn, the deep fried fast foods, obviously all the things that we shouldn't be getting in our diet, because those two sections, those are going to be the ones that produce those free radicals that can be toxic to the body. Polyunsaturated omega-3s and omega-6s are important, but it's important, again, the levels of them. So you do want to have more omega-3s than omega-6s in the body, meaning fishes, mackerels, flax seeds, dark leafy greens are an extremely good source of omega-3s. And that's what really helps to fight that heart disease. Omega-6s are important in the body as well in terms of being able to fight off disease, but we don't want that to be at a high level. And unfortunately, in the SAD diet, the standard American diet, the SAD diet, there's a lot more foods that are available that have omega-6s, and the more omega-6s you get in the body, the higher that level gets, the more refining inflammation starts to occur, and that chronic inflammation starts to occur in a person. So if you have an individual that has a lot of joint pain, they wake up stiff, they really can't do a whole lot, or they have acne, they have psoriasis, look at how many omega-6s they're getting. Are they eating a lot of corn, soybeans, cotton seeds, margarine, mayonnaise, salad dressings that instead of being an avocado oil base, it's a canola oil base? Or they're eating a lot of the trans and monounsaturated foods. Take some of those out and see how their body does. And oftentimes you'll see that their body, the levels of inflammation start to actually decrease when those foods are removed. All right, genetically modified organisms, of course, I had to put this in here because it is something that's important, and it's important to know both sides of the argument. So when it comes to GMOs, genetically modified organisms, originally it was developed to try to create crops that are going to withstand harsh conditions, or to blend different crops to create a new crop. So the idea of it theoretically isn't bad. Unfortunately, what our big companies have been doing is they've been taking the idea of GMO and genetically modifying organisms to be able to withstand pesticides and herbicides and all these sides that kill, right? Anything with side means kill. So our products that are the most genetically modified to withstand all the herbicides and pesticides they spray on it are soybean, corn, sugar beets, canola, and cotton, either the material or even oils. So the problem with it is that when you genetically modify something to withstand pesticides and herbicides, that means even if you spray it with all these chemicals, it's not going to die. But what ends up happening, similar to the skin, that plant is going to absorb the herbicides, it's going to absorb the pesticides, it's going to absorb those chemicals, and now it's being shipped, taken to a store, you purchase it, you eat it and feed it to your family, and now we're exposing ourselves to those different chemicals that we really should not be exposed to. If you actually look at when people spray, like Roundup, for example, that is going to require masks, gloves, that's going to require protection because we know it's toxic. So the idea of GMO is good, especially in those areas that need it, that are the third world countries where a lot of people get their income off of growing crops. But when we're modifying them to withstand chemicals that are getting into the food and then we're selling it, that's when the problem comes in. That's when the ethics or the question of ethics comes in. Carbohydrates is an extremely important source of energy, but it's not the only source of energy. So it's important to understand that while the body readily utilizes it, and if it had a choice, carbs and sugars would be the first thing it utilizes, it's not the only source of energy. Fats is a really good source of energy for the body too. So when it comes to carbohydrates, there's simple and there's complex. Simple, mono and saccharides and disaccharides. This is really just going to be the molecule pair. So this isn't chemistry, nutrition. We're not going to get into that. Just try to familiarize yourself with the words. So when you do go into your secondary school setting, or if you happen to be in just a random conversation with someone, you can throw out monosaccharides and disaccharides and just know it's a singular sugar molecule versus pairs of singular sugar molecules. But this is really important to understand that when carbs get broken down, it gets used as sugar. And this is where we're really seeing the debate with diet, is that the FDA is saying make 50% of your diet carbohydrates, but if we actually don't need all of that energy, it's going to get broken down and get stored as fat, because that's how sugar gets stored, is as fat. So if you're wondering why I'm eating the Kellogg's and I'm eating the Nutri-Grain bars and I don't understand why I still can't control my weight, it's because those products have a high amount of carbs in them, and if you're not using all of it like athletes are, then your body's just going to store it as fat, and those stores are going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you start to stuff more and more simple sugars in it. So it's really important to keep in mind that carbs are going to get broken down as sugar. If sugar isn't stored as glycogen or in the liver, it's going to get pushed into those fat cells until you actually need to utilize it. During digestion, again, gets broken down to glucose. Glycogen is that small amount of storage. It's about 100 to 400 grams that's stored in the muscles in the liver. So remember, the body is very smart, and it will store pockets of energy where it needs it. For example, in your large muscle groups in the legs, your body will have some glycogen stores just in case you have to fight or flee, right? You need that instant energy to be able to take off or to be able to fight, so the body has it readily available. The liver processes everything all day long. And so the liver is going to need some fat stores on it to be able to pull as energy to continue those processes. When it comes to refined carbohydrates versus whole grains, we have to talk about the germ and we have to talk about the grain in itself. And I have an image on the next slide for you guys to see that. So there's there's three different levels. There's an inner layer, there's a middle layer, there's an outer layer. So the inner layer is going to be the germ. That's going to be where all the good nutrient goodness is. The endosperm is going to be that casing around it. Then the bran is going to be what we actually purchase from the store. So unfortunately, in processing of grains and carbohydrates, the germ is going to be removed, leaving the starch and the endosperm, right? Oh, sorry, the endosperm is what we purchase from the store, but this refined carbohydrate, all of the nutrients have been taken. So the vitamins have been taken, the minerals have been taken, the fiber has been taken, and now we're simply left with this refined carbohydrate, which turns into simple sugar, which gets stored as fat if we don't use it. So if you're an athlete, of course, carbohydrates is going to be a very good resource for you to utilize because your body needs it to be able to burn quick, and your body's going to use it all. When it comes to individuals who are not extremely athletic, maybe you work out an hour a day and that's about it, and then you sit the rest of the day, having a high carbohydrate diet may not be beneficial for you because you may find that those fat stores on your body end up getting bigger and bigger and bigger as your body stores away that sugar. All right, so here's an example of what that oat looks like in nature, right? So ideally we want to get the whole thing, just like with eggs. I don't know where this whole egg white thing came from, but just like with eggs, nature made it as a whole. So what we need to do is ingest it as a whole, right? So if you're able to get fully whole grain kernels, then you're going to be able to get this vitamin E, vitamin B, you're going to be able to get the antioxidants and the minerals that your body can utilize. So now we're utilizing a nutrient dense food versus if we go by just the bran or the oatmeal, the Quaker oats and stuff like that. Those germs have been taken out. So now we're getting a product that's pretty much just carbs, and we really don't have any other types of minerals and vitamins in it to actually be beneficial. So we call that a nutrient lacking food. Right? Glycemic index is important. So if you're the type and you're like, well, I want to know how is my blood sugar going to be affected, or how's my family member's blood sugar going to be affected if they eat certain foods, there's different charts that you can get that you can look up online for free that will tell you if you eat this kind of carbohydrate, your blood sugar is going to spike. If you eat this kind of carbohydrate, it's going to decrease. Keep in mind that when it comes to sugar, fiber is a really good component to have with it because it kind of negates that blood sugar spike. So insulin and glucose levels naturally rise and fall all day long. As we eat, that food gets broken down, our blood glucose levels rise a little bit because now we need some energy to actually process that food. But then as the body kind of comes down from that, insulin gets produced to kind of pull some of that sugar out to be able to store it in glycogen. And if those glycogen stores get full, again, about 100 to 400, depending on the person, then it's going to push it into the fat cells to store it the rest of the way. So quick rise in glucose can produce a high glycemic index. Again, we don't want these quick spikes because that means the body has to push out a whole bunch of insulin several times a day, and the pancreas can start to get pooped out. So if you consistently have high blood glucose levels all day long, your pancreas is consistently pushing out this insulin, what's going to end up happening is you can start to develop signs and symptoms of diabetes or type 2 diabetes, which we know is bad because it can lead to neurodegenerative issues. It can lead to blindness. It can lead to other health conditions. So we really want our bodies to be able to control that blood glucose. But one of the best ways to do that is to be able to control how much of it you're actually putting into your body in the first place. All right. Eating high glycemic index foods may increase your appetite. So those that find themselves eating multiple times a day, or finding that they eat, let's say, a thing of Pringles and then they're hungry an hour later, it's because your body's just burning through that stuff and just pushing it away and storing it. And especially if it's not a nutrient dense food, your body is going to send signals to your brain saying, hey, I know you ate, but I didn't get enough nutrients from this. I need more nutrients. And that's where the habit of snacking and eating all day long comes in. Because if you're not supplying your body with the nutrient and vitamins it needs to produce the function, it's going to keep telling your brain, I need this stuff, go find it. And that's where people are like, I'm hungry all day long. Well, because you're not feeding your body what it needs to actually be satisfied with what you gave it. So be smart with what you're putting into your body and allow your body to do the rest. All right, so here is an example. It's important to understand that when it comes to food, what is your food made of? So now we're getting away from the idea of calorie, 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 because we're finding that calorie really doesn't mean health. It just means this is how much energy you're able to get from this food. But take a look at what is your food made of, right? So for example, that banana that I have up there, it has 13% dietary fiber. Even though a lot of it does have different components of sugar, that fiber is still going to be helpful in negating that blood sugar spike, right? So you see on the chart that the banana is not the highest on the index. What is the highest? Cornflakes, white wheat bread, donuts, waffles, white rice, boiled potatoes, French fries, watermelons up there. But watermelon is interesting because it's very useful, and that's why it's a summer fruit, because there's so much water that's in it that it really does help to hydrate you. So even though it does have sugar in it, I've known individuals that, and I've done it myself, I've eaten a small watermelon each morning in the summer, and I've had no change to my body weight or the amount of fat stores that I have, but I felt extremely hydrated for the day. So that's going to be kind of an outlier in that. But if you look at that top glycemic index, the majority of that stuff is in the standard American diet, and that's what people eat day in and day out. As you go down on the list, you notice it gets a little more green. So at the bottom, those are going to be the foods that don't cause that increase in blood glucose spike, right? So tomatoes, your cabbages, your mushrooms, and these are going to be extremely nutrient dense foods. So the lower you get down the list, the more nutrient dense foods that you find. The higher you get up on the list, the more lack of nutrient foods that you find. And if you're consuming a lot of those foods, one, not only are you increasing your blood glucose, but two, you're also not giving your body the nutrient vitamins that it needs. So it's going to continue to send those signals, hey, I'm hungry, give me what I need, until you actually give it what it needs. All right. And at the bottom chart, what I wanted to show was a banana compared to a donut. And a banana, obviously, you see that it has sugar, but it also has that fiber. Donut has extremely little fiber, if anything. What it has more of is going to be those carbohydrates. And again, carbohydrates, once they get broken down into the body, if you don't utilize it all, it gets stored into your fat cells. And then those fat cells, again, can grow bigger and bigger and bigger. All right. Added sugars and refined sugars. You already know that white sugar, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup has had a lot of media attention in the past years. Different sweeteners added to food. So what you're really looking for is you're looking for foods that don't have any added sugar. Now, the major food production companies, and I don't look at Oreos and things like that as food, I look at it as a product. So companies that produce those types of food-like products, they will put cleverly on the packaging, no added sugar, which means that after they finish their recipe, they didn't add any extra sugar. Doesn't mean they didn't put sugar in it already. They're just saying we didn't add extra from outside of our normal recipe. When it comes to natural foods like mushrooms, bananas, watermelons, where you can grow those, you really can't put them and process them in a lab. Those are going to have fiber attached to it. So again, fiber negates that sugar. So when we're looking at the wholeness of our foods, yeah, that Oreo may not have added sugar, but it still has sugar and zero fiber, meaning your blood glucose is going to spike. Versus if you have that fiber paired with it, like in fruits, your blood sugar is not going to spike as high. Therefore, you're not going to get those negative effects. All right. Also, some individuals recommend that sugars in your diet should mainly come from whole fruits and dairy products, but ice cream is technically a dairy product. So should they actually come from dairy products, right? That's where we have to look at our bodies and decide, how do our bodies function if we have these foods or if we don't have these foods? All right. An important source, again, but not the only source, fat is a really good source of energy as well for the body to utilize, but it has to have been utilized. The issue is with a lot of individuals on the standard American diet or the SAD diet is that the majority of their energy has come from carbs. So that's what their body's used to doing. As soon as you take those carbs away, and the body has to burn off of fats, they're going to start to feel some illnesses. They're going to start to get a headache and feel fatigued because their body is like, all right, I'm used to having this and I don't have these carbs. Let me try to switch over to fats. And it will switch over. Your body's smart. It will do it. You just have to give it a couple of days to do that. All right. So recommended carb intake, again, based off the FDA, about 200 to 300 grams per day, about 45 to 65% of total calories. If you're an athlete, this works great. I found in research, if you're not an athlete, if you're not someone expending a ton of energy a day, having this type of high carbohydrate diet is not going to be very beneficial for you. So look at maybe flipping your carbs values with your fat values. Instead of having 25 to 35% fats, have 25 to 35% carbs, 45 to 65% fats, and you'll probably find that your body is able to run so much more efficiently off of that. All right, again, carbohydrate breakdown. All carbs, whether they're produced in the laboratory or if they have or if they're made in nature, are going to get broken down to sugar. But again, fiber is a huge component, and that's what we're really finding in science, that fiber really helps to negate that high blood sugar spike. So look at, what is your food? Is it processed in laboratory or is it found in nature? If it's found in nature, you're much better off eating that food versus that high processed food that was made in a laboratory. All right, why do we keep getting bigger? So we talked about this a little bit. As the years have gone on, the weights of Americans and the obesity has gone up. So why is that? Especially if we've been really trying to control our fats that are in the diet. All right, again, we talked about fiber. We're taking a closer look at that. When it comes to fiber, there's soluble and there's insoluble fiber. So soluble is going to be able to be broken down with water. Insoluble is those fibers that you eat, and when it comes out the other end, it kind of looks the same, right? Everyone knows what I mean when we talk about corn. So corn is an example of an insoluble fiber. The purpose of the insoluble fibers is to help clean out the large intestines. It's kind of like a mini car wash or squeegee session for your large intestines, because there's a lot of gunk that can get built up. And if you're not drinking a lot of water, if you're not getting good fiber in your diet, not a ton, right, but just a good amount of fiber in your diet, then a lot of those systems can get backed up. All right, functional fiber, non-digestible carbs that have been isolated and synthesized, right? Total fiber is the sum of the total dietary fiber with the functional fiber. So again, fiber is important. We understand that. Recent studies are showing that if you are constipated, that fiber actually can cause more constipation, or too much fiber can cause diarrhea. So when it comes to actually being able to have good, clean bowel movements, we're finding that fiber isn't the biggest benefit from that. It's not something that's really going to help you, but it is something that is going to keep your blood sugar under control and help kind of clean out that gut a little bit. All right, high fiber diets can help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, again, because we talked about the regulation of glucose. So now you understand why fiber can actually help prevent that. Heart disease, which we know high blood sugar leads to chronic inflammation, which can lead to heart disease, pulmonary disease, cancer. It can lead to all kinds of things. So this sugar is really a culprit of a lot of the chronic health conditions that we have, but people don't know that just because I eat that Wonder Bread, that it's pretty much the same as me eating the candy bar. People don't know that. So that education really does create potential power. Sources of fiber, all plant foods have fiber. It's great. I don't recommend utilizing like the Metamucil. You have like the Fiber One bars, which are packed full with sugar. Just go with natural food supplies. Just go with natural food sources. In terms of fiber intake, about 38 grams for men, about 25 grams per day for women, needs to come from foods. If you can get them from foods, by all means go ahead. We do have some really good science behind getting supplements, and not that I recommend supplements all the time, especially if you have the actual food sources to get it from. I fully recommend getting natural food sources, but if you're in an area you don't have fresh produce, then the supplement could help until you're able to get that fresh produce. All right, vitamins. Vitamins are essential organic substances required in small amounts to regulate various processes in the cell. 4 fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, all really important. And notice how it's fat soluble, not carbohydrate soluble. So fats are really important for you to get into your diet. Don't skip out on the fats just because you're afraid to get fat. Again, the fat that's in your cells gets fed by the sugar, by the carbs. The fat that you eat helps with a lot of these vitamins and minerals to actually get utilized in the body. And your brain is majority fat. So if you really want to fuel your body, getting fats into your diet is essential. This whole low fat thing has been found to just be absolutely detrimental to individuals' health. The other 9 are going to be water soluble, meaning you need water in order for them to function. So Z, vitamin Bs, your B12s, your biotins, all of these are going to be essential, but you have to be in a properly hydrated state. That's why I say water is so extremely important, because that's the only way that your body is going to be able to utilize a lot of these essential vitamins and minerals. And a side note, vitamin D you can make by standing in the sun, right? So the body can actually make that. You don't need to get that in your diet. If you just stand outside for about 10 minutes a day, then your body is able to make enough vitamin D that you need to be able to supply you for that day. So getting grounded outside in the sunlight is extremely beneficial. Functions of vitamins help chemical reactions take place. They help unleash energy. They help red blood cells, maintain nervous system, skeletal, immune system health is so important. When it comes to vitamins, it acts as an antioxidant, so it gets a lot of those free radicals out of your system, so your body's not in an oxidative stress state all the time. Sources of vitamins. Human body does have the ability to manufacture vitamin D, but in terms of the other vitamins, you do need to get those from your diet. So fruits, vegetables, grains, having a variety in your diet. I would recommend a lot of those come from fruits and vegetables, though, not so much from grains. Certain vitamin deficiencies are associated with health risks. So most people have heard of lack of vitamin D and scurvy, right? Or vitamin C and scurvy. You really have to have no vitamin C in order to really get scurvy and be deficient for a long period of time. But we do know that there's certain health effects that can happen. For example, with vitamin D, individuals that don't get a lot of vitamin D or don't get enough vitamin D have found to have lower immune systems. They've been found to have symptoms of depression. They've been found to have decreased hair or increased hair loss. Their nails have become brittle. Their skin has become weak. So there are some negative effects to not getting these vitamins. Keep in mind that if you get too much of it, that can also be bad. So make sure that you go and check in with your primary care physician, or even do your own research to decide, for my particular body, for my body weight and my gender, what should I get in terms of amounts of vitamins. All right, here's the different types of vitamins. General recommended intakes for men versus women. Again, gender is big, and it's something where we're seeing that our physiology, men and women, are just different. And not saying it's good or bad, it's just different. So important dietary sources for vitamin A, we have liver. The organs from animals are so beneficial, but in our culture, we really don't eat those things. So you can also go with butter, you can go with milk, you can go with oranges, deep greens, like those vegetable greens, those are going to be important. Vitamin D, you can get those from food, but again, go stand in the sun. Let your body make it for free. Vitamin E, vegetable oils, you can get them from asparagus, peaches, nuts, seeds. So looking at this list, you can see if you don't get a variety of foods in your diet, if you're not buying something new each week, how you can be deficient. And a lot of individuals, especially when it comes to minerals, are deficient in magnesium. Magnesium controls over 350 processes in the body, including the heart processes. So you can see why, if we're just eating McDonald's and Taco Bell every day, or throughout the week, why our bodies aren't functioning is because we're not getting it the vitamins that it needs, the minerals that it needs. All right, when it comes to water-soluble vitamins, again, you'll notice on the list, leafy greens, eggs, animal foods, some dairy products, fruits, again, vegetables, vegetables, vegetables. That's where you're gonna be able to get a lot of these from. And it's going to be able to help you control your glucose, help you have an increased metabolism, have a more efficient metabolism, help with your actual RNA and DNA building and sequencing. And studies are showing epigenetics that what you do in your lifestyle, how you eat, if you work out, how much you're sleeping, the quality of sleep, actually turns on and off certain genes. So if you're looking to pass those genes onto your kid and you want the best possible genes for your kid, the year before, turn on those genes. So now you can pass that through your chromosomes to your child, and your child can benefit from those positive DNA sequences and not so much the negative DNA sequences that get turned on. When it comes to our other water-soluble vitamins, again, we're finding it from eggs, from poultry, from fishes, from fruits, from vegetables. So keep in mind that variety is going to be your best friend when it comes to having a well-rounded diet. Minerals, inorganic micronutrients. So minerals help regulate different body functions. They help your macros to be able to be utilized as energy. They aid in growth. They maintain body tissue. So there's a lot of different things that minerals do, and salt is included in a mineral. Sodium is included in a mineral. So when we talk about blood pressure later on, we'll talk about how some of the studies are showing that increased sodium really didn't affect blood pressure at all. So why in our medical community we're still telling people to not put salt in their diet when clearly it's a major mineral that we need for body function is besides me. So major minerals, we have calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, potassium, chloride in trace amounts. And again, we get these from the foods that we eat. We really don't need to seek these out. We naturally can get these from these foods. Trace mineral, minute amounts, copper, fluoride, iodine, iron, selenium, zinc. Iron's extremely important, ladies, including magnesium and calcium when you're on your monthly, because we are losing a lot of blood and the body really has to clean itself and rejuvenate. So those are going to be extremely important minerals that we get in our diets, especially during that time. Issues can arise if you have too much or too little. Iron deficiency can cause anemia, right? Osteoporosis if you don't have enough calcium, or if you don't have enough vitamin D to pull that calcium into the bones. Those actually work together, and some individuals don't know that. Low potassium can cause high blood pressure, cause heart disease. Too much potassium can cause your heart to start to slow. So it's really important to understand that we need to have a knowledge of this, but do we need to actually go out and get supplements for these? No, as long as we have a well-rounded, balanced diet that includes a lot of different types of fruits and vegetables and meats or protein products, we're going to be able to get these minerals in a sufficient amount. All right, so facts about selected minerals. These are just a couple of them: calcium, fluoride, iron, magnesium. Again, magnesium, very important in neurological health, your heart health, your brain health. And where we're going to get these is we're going to get them, again, leafy vegetables. We're going to get them from some juices, from fruits. You can get them from meat and poultry products. You can get them from legumes, seeds, milks. Again, there's a lot of different places you can get these from. Toxic effects of megadoses, especially when it comes to like magnesium, you could get poopy pants or diarrhea, right? So that's all bad. If you don't have enough, again, your cardiovascular health is going to diminish. And it's interesting to see that magnesium is the #1 deficiency that we see in America, and cardiovascular conditions is the #1 cause of death in our country. So while those haven't been found to actually cause each other, there's a huge correlation between those. And I find it kind of interesting that the #1 deficiency also is kind of paired with the #1 cause for death in our country. Other minerals, we have phosphorus, potassium, selenium, sodium. Again, sodium is so important with water balance, right? So if you're the type where you've experienced cramps, you're an athlete who has experienced cramping, when it comes to sodium, sodium is part of our electrolytes. So having no sodium is not good. Having too much sodium, that's where we can start to see edema or excess fluid buildup, and that could, in a sense, affect the blood volume, which could raise blood pressure, right? Could. Not saying it absolutely does, because again, studies have shown that there's been no effect in terms of someone having hypertension and them eating more sodium. They really haven't seen a rise in blood pressure, but we do know that too much of anything can be bad, right? Potassium, keep in mind that it's very important, but please don't go on the banana diet and just get a whole bunch of potassium, because you could give yourself a heart attack. Potassium starts to decrease the pace and rhythm of the heart to the point where it will stop completely. That means you're having a heart attack, and we don't want that to happen. So, water, vital but completely underappreciated. The body is about 50 to 60%. Some studies are showing that it's up to 85%, depending on where you're at in your lifetime. Children are a little more, let's say, water filled than adults are. But it's so extremely important, and it's something that really just helps our body as a whole and helps our body function so much better. So we need it in digestion, we need it for absorption of food, we need it as a medium to be able to help those chemical reactions happen. So in terms of how much water you need, a basic kind of tool that you can use, take your body weight, divide it in half, that's how many ounces. So for example, if you have a large container like this is about 60 ounces. What I'm going to need is anywhere from 3 to 4 of these just because of my output. If it was just based off my body weight, I would need maybe one of these, but because it's not, I'm going to need more because I'm looking at the amount of time I'm working on a day, which I'm doing 2 a days, and I'm looking at what is my energy expenditure and what am I doing that's going to require a little more water. So water is important. First thing you do when you wake up, drink a glass of water. Drink water throughout the day up until maybe an hour before you go to bed, and then go to sleep and do it again. Water is so important. All right, other substances, antioxidants. We understand that blueberries and strawberries and raspberries, and there's all these different berry mixes that can help clear out toxins in the body. Free radicals are things that can damage our cells. They can damage DNA. They can damage and start mutating genes. So if we have an accumulation of free radicals in our body and we're not utilizing things like food, water is going to be a huge tool that's used to clear out those free radicals. Also movement. Remember, our lymphatic system is a process that helps, or is a system that helps to clear out the toxins in our body. So when it comes to life and wellness, having water, a good diet, movement, good sleep, it's really a whole host of things to be healthy, not just what you're eating. Although antioxidants can be helpful with that, the different fruits and vegetables that have the vitamin C's, the vitamin E's. When it comes to finding foods with good antioxidants, look for color, bright colors. So the reds, the oranges, the deep greens, the purples. Those are going to be foods that are high in antioxidants that can be very beneficial for your system. All right, phytochemicals. These phytochemicals are substances found in plant foods that may help prevent chronic disease. So we look at garlics, we look at onions. Those are cancer fighting and really help to boost the immune system. If you include broccolis in your diet, like the cruciferous vegetables, the cauliflower, those can help fight free radicals. Carotenoids are found in green vegetables. They can help preserve eyesight. They're also found in carrots, which are beneficial for eyesight. So again, if you're the type where you're just eating chicken, broccoli every single day, you can see how you're missing out on all these important substances that you can be getting to be able to help and feed your body. All right, when it comes to nutritional guidelines, this is where it gets kind of contradictory of what the research is actually showing. So I tried to highlight in yellow what is backed by research and what is not backed by research. So when it comes to dietary reference intakes, or DRIs, it's going to be different. So if you want just a basic something based off the standard American diet, you can go to myplate.org, and that's going to help you with some food guidance. But when it comes to you individually, use these as very light guidelines to help you discover how you should eat and what works for your body. All right, so when it comes to DRIs, there's standard recommended intakes to help prevent deficiencies. So if you don't want your population to get scurvy, or if you don't want them to die of heart attacks and things like that, these are recommendations that have been put in place to try to prevent that from happening. Because again, not everyone knows about this. And this is based off a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you're the type where you're like, I don't need 2,000 calories, all I need is 1,500 a day, then these recommendations are going to be lower for you. If you're the type, you're an athlete and you work out 6 hours a day, you're going to need 5,000 calories. Then you're going to have to up those values because you're doing a lot more with your body. All right, designed to encourage and improve nutritional and physical activity. When it comes to overall recommendations following a healthy eating pattern, obviously it's general enough to say, yes, that's true. Focus on variety, nutrient dense, and amount. Absolutely get as many nutrient dense foods as you can. The one thing that I don't agree with in terms of what your author put up here was limit calories from sugars. and saturated fats, I do recommend limiting calories from sugars. But when it comes to saturated fats, we understand like avocados have saturated fats, cashews have saturated fats, and those are paired in foods with other vitamins and minerals that are very beneficial. So as long as you're not eating canisters of cashews every day, you should be pretty good. Shifting to healthier food and beverage choices, and supporting healthy eating patterns for all. And this is really a whole community tribe thing. So if you're really trying to eat healthy, it helps to get the whole family on board, because now all of you can support each other and you can all experience the positive benefits of eating healthier. All right, 3 U.S. healthy eating patterns, healthy USA style pattern, there's healthy vegetarian, and there's healthy Mediterranean. There's been a lot of studies done on the Mediterranean diet, and because of the variety of foods that they get and the decreased amount of processed fried foods that they actually have in their diet, it's been found that heart rates or heart disease rates have been decreased in those populations. All right, all of those are going to emphasize whole foods, vegetables, whole grains, including the germ in it, beans, peas. I don't agree with fat-free or low-fat milk products, because oftentimes they replace that a lot with sugar, and I have some slides to talk about that. And healthy oils, right? Red meats, really listen to your body when it comes to that. Some people say, well, should I eat meat? Should I not eat meat? You can eat as much meat as you want, but how is your body reacting to it? So for example, my body, myself, I don't need meat every day, right? Because my body doesn't utilize all of it every day. And when I do eat meat, it's a very small portion of meat. So that's just how my body functions. Your body may function different. All right, specific recommendations, 10% of calories per day from added sugar. In Europe, they recommend less than 5%. So again, if you go to different countries, these numbers are going to be a little different. Less than 10% of calories from saturated fats, again, depends on your source. If you're getting it from whole foods and natural sources, you really don't have to worry too much about the saturated fats, because your body's going to tell you when it's had enough. When it comes to sodium, sodium is an essential micronutrient. It's an essential mineral. Please don't forget that. So don't try to decrease your sodium intake to nothing, because your body's not going to function. It needs that for proper neurological function. So don't skip out on the sodium, but also don't add piles of salt to your already salty foods. All right, it's all about a balance. And then alcohol, please do that in moderation. Listen to your body. Some individuals, I'm finding when I was in college, my body could withstand alcohol. Now, 1 glass, and that's about all I can take, and that's even a little bit. And that's just because my body's changing, and that's okay, right? It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just my body's asking me for different things. Also, strive to meet federal physical activity guidelines, maintain a healthy body weight. Again, next chapter we'll talk all about that. So we'll get to that weight management aspect. All right, USDA healthy foods patterns. These are just different types of the food pattern styles and the types of things that you should be getting each day. So if you want to, you can go ahead and pause this and just take a look at the different values. If you're looking at more of a Mediterranean diet, this is just a general guideline of the different things that they get in their diets. If you're vegetarian, general guidelines on what you should get in your diet. So again, it really just depends on your body and what you want to follow and what your health goals are. All right, making shifts to align with healthy eating patterns. So most Americans need to make changes to their current food and beverage choices. Conveniency is huge in our country, and what we found is that the more convenient, the more people are going to purchase. And companies like McDonald's have admitted that they're not in the business of food, they're in the business of real estate, they're in the business of making money. And so these companies, while they should be looking out for our health, they're really not. So what we have to do as consumers is really take that into our own hands and say, I'm spending money on this food product, and what is it getting me? What is it giving me? Is it just convenient so I can not feel hungry for a couple hours, or am I actually getting nutrients from this? All right, people are more likely to shift from their eating patterns if it's a collaborative effort. So get the whole household involved, get your friends involved, create a challenge for you and your friends on social media, and really make it a tribal thing. In Europe, there's some places that for lunch, they completely shut down the whole city because eating is supposed to be a social event. It's an event that you share. It shouldn't be something that you do in hiding, right? So really try to make it a collaborative effort if you're really trying to change your eating habits. All right, and there's socio-ecological models, SEM models, that recognize different interrelated factors, and we'll talk about that. All right, so when it comes to dietary intakes compared to recommendations, what the average American is getting is very different from what the recommendations are. But even then, the research behind the recommendations has been kind of wonky. And a lot of that is because a lot of the food companies have vested interest in the market, and they have vested interest in people purchasing their products. And you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money making a product, because then that means you're not going to make more money on the back end. So really dive in and dig into these different food companies that you're supporting, because we really honestly can vote with our dollar. And if we stop buying a certain product, then because of maybe they're putting yellow dye 5 in their products or red dye number 40, they're going to be forced to change, because now the public is no longer purchasing their product as is. So we have a lot more power than people think. All right, estimated daily calorie intakes. This is going to be general. Again, it's not going to be exact to everyone, but if you have no idea where you lie, this could be a good area to start, right? Again, when we talk about calories, we're strictly talking about energy. We're not talking about maintaining your body weight. We're talking about specific energy needs. If you find that you're getting lower energy in the afternoon, maybe you need to up your calorie intake a little bit. If you find that you're starting to eat once or twice a day, maybe that's the only calorie intake that your body needs at that time. So really listen to that. All right, we talked about SEM for food and physical activity decisions. So there's a whole host that goes into overall health outcomes and wellness. So what this model shows is that there's a whole bunch of factors that influence your food and beverage intake, including social and cultural norms, settings, individual factors like physical activity. So when it comes to the sectors, government's going to be included, education, what you actually learn. And when it comes to school lunches, what we're teaching our students is that it's okay to count pizza as a vegetable, right? It's okay to have chocolate milk every single day, or eat a chocolate muffin every day at breakfast. So these are the cultural norms that we're teaching our children. And if we really want to make a healthier country, we have to start with the kids, and we have to start with changing that mindset. There are individual factors that can influence your food beverage intake and choices, such as age, sex, socioeconomic status. There is a misconception that says it's cheaper to eat bad versus eating healthy, when that's actually not the case. If you spend $25 at In-N-Out versus $25 on fruits, vegetables, and meats, the fruits, vegetables, and meats are going to last a lot longer, because you need less of them to fill you up, versus that fast food, you're going to need more of that to fill you up. Meaning for one meal you spent $25, but for 5 meals you spent $25 on the other hand. All right, USDA claims that you should balance your calories, that you should switch to fat-free or low-fat milk or dairy, that you should have lower amounts of sodium, that obviously drink water instead of sugar. So some of these things I agree with, some of them I don't. In terms of balanced calories, there's really nothing to support that that's actually going to control your weight long term. Maybe short term it can control it, but long term it's probably not really going to control it. Half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. It really depends on you, and it really depends on what your body's telling you that it needs at that point, and what your energy expenditure has been at that point. Make at least half of your grains whole grains. It is a good idea to try to get the germ in with your grains. So as natural to the natural sources you can get, the better. When it comes to fat-free to low-fat, we'll look on the next slides. Oftentimes that means that the company either added more sugar to make it taste better in order to make it low fat or fat free, and that it doesn't mean it's any healthier for you. And remember, your brain is made of fat, your organs need to utilize fat, so fat is essential in our body. We even have fat soluble vitamins that need fat in order to be able to actually be used in the body. Drinking water is always going to be beneficial for you. All right, so real world evidence, when they say that use lower fat products, these are labels of Oreos. One is going to be the normal Oreos. The other is going to be the reduced fat Oreos. And if you take a look at the actual sugar content of each one, yeah, it looks like that the fat was able to be decreased by 1 gram compared to the normal Oreos. So technically, they're not lying. It is reduced fat by 1 gram. That means 9 calories. But if you look at it, the reduced fat Oreos has 10 more calories than the normal Oreos package, and the sugar content has actually increased by 1 gram versus the normal Oreos, and the regular Oreos have less carbohydrates versus the reduced fat carbohydrates. So we see that even though technically the fat has been reduced by 1 gram, which is not a lie, it's true, all the other values have increased, including the serving size. So in one package for this label, package has 2 cookies, or serving size is 2 cookies. On the other side, the serving size is 3 cookies, but the actual amount of servings in a container has decreased, right? So they haven't given you any more extra cookies. And overall nutrition value has not improved at all. But yet some individuals are paying more for reduced fat versus regular when it's really not the same. Or it's really about the same. It's not any healthier. All right, another example of real world evidence, low-fat vanilla yogurt versus whole milk vanilla yogurt. We're talking about Dannon yogurt here. So if you take a look at the low-fat vanilla yogurt, you see that the total fat's about 2 grams versus the whole milk is about 4.5 grams. But if you take a look at the other values, we see that it's really no better. So the sugar has actually been increased in the low-fat vanilla yogurt by 7 grams. The carbohydrates have been increased by 2 grams. So it's really important to look at the values, and the overall calories has been increased. So it's really important to look at the overall nutrition facts when you're looking at low fat versus whole fat or whole food products, because a lot of these companies technically are lowering the fat, but they're increasing everything else, which doesn't make the product any healthier for you. It could actually make it less healthy for you. Last one is going to be most obvious, milk, right? Some people say you need fat-free milk. Some people say no, do whole milk. I personally drink whole milk because I feel like it was made wholly in nature, so I should ingest it wholly in nature. Not saying I'm drinking a gallon of milk a day at all. I supplement it, right? Put a little dash in my tea, or I may put a little bit if I'm making sweet potato, mashed potatoes or something. But if you look at the labels again, we find that the fat-free has about 12 grams of sugar, and the whole milk still has 12 grams of sugar, even though the fat content total has been shifted. All right. We also see that the carbohydrates are exactly the same. We see that the calories in general are going to decrease slightly, but we see that the serving size is still the same. The majority of the product's still the same. It's just the fat that's been decreased. And again, we need fat in our body because fat helps our brain, it helps our organs, it helps produce those or process those vitamins. Fat's needed in our bodies. All right, so when you look at foods and you're looking at these labels, make sure to ask yourself, is it really healthier? All right, here's another example, Jif versus Nutella. And Nutella took a huge movement as a healthier option for individuals. But if we know that carbohydrates and sugars get stored as fat, we take a look at the fat content. Jif has about 3 grams of fat for that particular product. Nutella, or of sugar, Nutella has about 21 grams of sugar. So while Nutella has been marketed as being a healthier option, we're seeing that it could actually be contributing to our childhood obesity rates, because now we have a product that has been deemed healthier because it's made out of hazelnuts. When in actuality, if you look at the actual product, the carbohydrates are going to be severely increased and the sugar is going to be severely increased. So it's not actually healthier for our youth versus what was being used before. All right, if you need a general guideline, again, you can go to myplate.gov. This is going to be an example of what they would have for you. Majority vegetables, majority fruits, have some grains, proteins. The one good thing I really like about this is it just shows variety. It shows that you really need to vary the types of foods that you eat and not stick to just the same thing every day. All right, USDA claims that energy intake and portion size is very important in terms of stabilizing your weights, right? What the research is showing is that when it comes to the dietary guidelines and recommendations that the USDA has or the FDA has, while physical activity is important, while looking at what you're eating is important, when it comes to the amount that you're eating or the intake, there's very little to support that is a true factor in managing your weight. All right, so what real world evidence has shown us is that the different foods that are out there, the companies are really confusing individuals between energy density and nutrient density. So again, when we talk about energy, we talk about what are the foods that are going to give you the amount of energy you need to complete your task during the day. Nutrient density is going to be different because that means what kind of vitamins, minerals, nutrients am I getting from this food? So I have two examples for you. First one is Kellogg's. Second one is going to be the Cocoa Pops, right? So when we talk about Special K, a lot of individuals, and I made this mistake too when I first started on my food journey, was that I bought Special K because I thought, oh, it's supposed to be healthier, right? But if you actually look at it, the calories are no different and the sugars are no different, right? And I should have put the sugars on here, I apologize. But they say that Cocoa Pops is going to make you fat, but Special K is not going to. If you notice, both are made by the company Kellogg's. They don't care which one you buy as long as you buy one. So they're going to appeal to both the masses, those that really don't care and love Cocoa Pops, and then those that are like, I'm trying to be healthier, let me use this product. Either way, they're still making the same product. So in a sense, if you're trying to be healthy and you're eating Special K, you might as well go for the Cocoa Pops. On the other hand, we have beverages, right? And I fell into this too with naked juices and things like that, thinking, oh, it's so much healthier for you, right? While there are more nutrients in it versus the sodas, obviously, what we're seeing is that higher calorie density, right? So I'm going to need one juice to be able to accomplish a whole lot of tasks, right? So essentially with 1,300 calories, what you can do is drink one juice and be good for the whole day with your amount of calorie needs. And also when it comes to sugar, the amount of sugar that's in these health juices is insane. I went to a juice bar, a pretty commonly named juice bar, and they have a green drink on there, but the green drink had 22 grams of sugar in it, and it was supposed to be a green drink. But again, to make it taste better for the general masses, we have to add sugar because most people are used to just eating sugar or having that taste of sugar when they ingest something. So pay attention to the product and what is actually in the product. All right, USDA, my plate, focus on whole fruits, which are rich in carbs, fibers, vitamins. Again, fruits and vegetables are naturally going to have carbohydrates in them. Not saying they're going to be absolutely rich full of them, but this is the one thing that is backed up by science. You should get a variety of fruits and vegetables in your diet. All right, varying your vegetables, again, actually backed up by science. You should get a variety of fruits and vegetables in your diet. Naturally, fruits and vegetables especially are going to be lower in calories. They're going to have more balance in terms of your fat content, your carbohydrate content, your different vitamin, mineral content. When you cook vegetables, some vegetables are better cooked, some are better raw. So really research that to decide which one should I eat raw. Research has shown that the leafy greens are better raw versus cooked, versus the cruciferous vegetables that are better cooked because it brings out a little more of those nutrients that your body can actually absorb. All right, make half your grains whole grains. It is backed up by research that you should add the germ in with your wheat. So again, the closer you get to the natural source, the better it is going to be for you. Again, grains are naturally going to be low in fat. You really don't need that, but that's where you get some of your vegetables, right? Your fruits, your avocados, your nuts, your seeds. That's where you can get those fats from. I recommend looking at the bread if you do eat bread. Sourdough and Ezekiel bread is going to be lower on the glycemic index versus your white breads or even your whole wheat brown breads. So pay attention to those. Cereals are going to be pretty high on the glycemic index when it comes to white grains like your white rices, your white pastas, your white tortillas. Those are going to be high on the glycemic index. So while having whole grains is backed up by research, the types of grains that the USDA is recommending is higher on the glycemic index. So especially if you have diabetes, make sure you pay attention to the type of grains that you're getting. All right, vary your protein, meats, poultry, fish, beans. If you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, you can go with nuts and seeds. There's different types of things that you can get. But again, it's having a variety. Don't eat steak every night for dinner. Don't eat just chicken. Don't eat just fish, right? You really need to get a variety because a lot of them are going to act different in the body and your body's going to get some good benefits from them. Here is a kind of, I guess, a podcast or a video, if you want to go watch it on YouTube, of a physician, Dr. Paul Saladino, and he makes a claim that everyone should eat more meat. So I thought that was just a really interesting, different perspective that you guys can check out later at your leisure. All right, USDA claims that move to low fat and fat free, and that's going to make your life so much better. Again, we've seen clearly on labels that when they take out the fat, they add in the sugar and the carbs. So when it comes to getting good fats, fat is essential. It helps with calcium, it helps with potassium, it helps with vitamin D. You can find products like dairy products that have vitamin D infused or that are infused with calcium. But again, getting the natural source is always going to be better because that's how your body has evolutionarily been designed to take it in. Processed cheese, I don't recommend processed cheese, especially the American Kraft singles, because those actually don't claim that they're cheese. It just claims that they're Kraft singles. And that's kind of weird to me. And a lot of people have said, oh, it's kind of like plastic, and who knows, it's made in a laboratory, so it might be closer to plastic than we're thinking. So try to go for those natural dairy products if your body can handle dairy. Some people's bodies can't handle dairy. So understand that if you take in dairy products and you notice you're getting bloated, you notice you have diarrhea, you notice maybe you feel a little sick, that's because your body cannot utilize that dairy right now. Either your gut microbiome's messed up, you don't have good gut health, or you've developed an allergy to it. You have to decrease your toxin levels. So if you're finding negative impacts from eating dairy, pull it out of your diet for a while and see how you do. And then later on, maybe you can slowly add those back in. All right, real world evidence. So study participants, when it comes to sugar intake, on the average American diet, we have kind of average sugar intake. Individuals on a lower fat diet have been found to take in more sugar than those on a lower carb diet. And remember, we have to go back to the physiology of what's happening in the body. Carbohydrates will always get broken down to glucose. That glucose will always get stored into fat cells. When it comes to fat, the fat is going to be utilized for your brain. It's going to be utilized for organ function. It's going to be utilized for other things. So again, throw out what you thought about fat and start to put in some of this new science and some of this science that's been proven that if you have more carbs in your diet, that means your waistline may grow larger. Those that have less carbs, not saying no carbs, but less carbs, their waistlines seem to not grow as much. All right, when it comes to oils, there's a whole lot of information about oils, but it's going to be a major source of vitamin E, is going to be a major source of essential fatty acids that we actually need, and you don't need a whole lot. So the oils that I recommend are going to be olive oil, olive oil, avocado oil, and you can even go with like a coconut oil. What I don't recommend is canola oil, safflower oil, vegetable oil, and cottonseed oil, because those oils are going to be extremely unstable, especially when heated at high temperatures. So the ones that I use to cook are going to be my avocado oil and my coconut oil. I'll use full fat butter as well to cook with, but what I use olive oil for is more of an after effect, because if you heat olive oil too much, it takes out a lot of those nutrient benefits. So, and when you're cooking, make sure that you're putting your food on a lower to medium heat. Don't cook it on high heat, because it's going to start to damage a lot of those nutrient benefits. So be patient, just let your food cook, let the good oils soak in, and get some health benefits from that. All right, so USDA MyPlate, if your diet is consistently nutrient rich, small amount of additional calories in the form of solid fats and added sugars can be consumed. So really, we don't want to overcomplicate eating. We don't want to overcomplicate diet. Nutrient rich, limiting the sugar, that is going to be your best bet in having overall health, right? And also adding in that physical activity. Doesn't mean you have to work out 6 hours a day, right? If you want to try to control your blood sugar even more, what you can do is after you eat, go on a 20-minute walk or stand up and walk in place for about 20 minutes. That physical activity can really help to regulate your blood sugar. And moving every day is essential. It's how our lymphatic system works. It's how our lymphatic system pulls out toxins and gets rid of it in our bodies, is by having that function. All right, so my plate group amounts and recommended for a 2,000 a day calorie diet. Again, this is just a recommendation. This is just something our government put out to say, hey, everyone's being super unhealthy. Let's try to be a little healthier based off the science that they want to utilize. All right, it's important to know that, the science that they want to utilize. All right, the DASH diet. The DASH diet got really popular in terms of hypertension and trying to decrease the amount of individuals with high blood pressure in our country. But again, what we're finding is that sodium really doesn't play a huge part in either lowering or raising blood pressure, but what does play a huge part is sugar and the chronic inflammation that is caused with sugar or high sugar intake or high carbohydrate intake. So DASH diet is a good general guideline to utilize when it comes to variety, but I wouldn't utilize it to a T because there's some studies that show it works, but then there's some studies that show that it doesn't really have any benefits. All right, so I lowered my salt intake. Why is my blood pressure still high? If you have some individuals in your life that have asked this question, you can always go to Boston University and they have a really good study that has shown that individuals with high blood pressure, when they increase or decrease their sodium levels, it really doesn't take it out of drastic ranges. All right, so we have individuals who had a sodium intake of 2,500 grams or less, or milligrams or less. We have that on the blue line, which is a little higher, and then we have individuals who are on a 2,500 to 4,000 milligram sodium intake per day, and you notice that their blood sugar or their blood pressure is actually lower than the individuals that were limiting their salt. And even furthermore, those individuals that got more than 4,000 milligrams per day in their diet of sodium, their blood pressure was even lower. So it's studies like this that really get us to question, why is our mainstream medical community still recommending no sodium when we've seen that the lower sodium you get in your diet, the worse that your physical condition can actually get. All right, so that's something to think about. The vegetarian alternative, so when it comes to vegetarians, there's vegans, there's lacto-vegetarians, there's lacto-ovo-vegetarians, there's partial vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians. It just means that people don't want to eat certain things either for personal reasons or ethical reasons. But if you are going to be on an altered diet to where you're not including meat products, again, it is very important to make sure that you're adding in some sort of protein, so legumes or nuts or something that has protein, because again, those amino acids are building blocks that really help to repair our tissues, and it's something our body needs. All right, dietary challenges for various population groups. Children and teenagers, obviously your diet's going to be different when you're growing and when you're getting into that adolescent stage versus college students. College students oftentimes aren't getting sleep. Their schedules are getting a little more impacted, so they may need more calorie needs. Pregnant women and women that are breastfeeding, remember, anything you take in as a woman when you're pregnant and breastfeeding is what you're giving your child. So you want to make sure you're giving your child the best nutrient-dense foods possible. Older adults are going to need something different because their body's at a different stage of life. They may not need as many calories because they're not doing as much work in terms of physical work, but they still need vitamins, they still need minerals, they still need variety. With all of these individuals, the one consistency is variety. You need to make sure you're getting a variety of fruits, vegetables, lean meats, grains every day to be able to feed your body what it needs. All right. Personal plans, making informed decisions about your food. You want to make sure that you use the information that's on the food label. If you need help with that, I can always help show you how to actually read those food labels, but a lot of you are very educated individuals, so you should be able to do that. No calorie labeling, but understand, again, calorie is just a measurement of energy. It does not mean that you're going to be able to maintain your body weight. Personally, I tried calorie counting and it did nothing for my body weight. It wasn't until I actually started concentrating on how much sugar I'm getting, that's when my body weight actually started to be maintained at a healthier level. Dietary supplements, don't take them in excess, and please really research the company you're getting these from. There's companies that produce very, very good supplements like Organifi, Four Sigmatic is a really good one. I don't get paid for any of those, so that's just me putting that out there. They're really, really good products, but then there's some companies that don't produce great products in terms of being bioavailable for your body to be able to absorb. So really research these companies, but remember, ideally we get these from food. In our food supply today, they're not so vitamin and nutrient rich. So what we're going to have to do is we may start to have to supplement later on down the line. All right, food package nutrient claims. There's individuals that claim that healthy is going to be foods that are low in total fat, et cetera, et cetera. Just follow the science, honestly. This whole slide is just general recommendations, but follow the science because the science is blowing a lot of this stuff out of the water. So just because someone tells you that's the case, do your own research and find that out for yourself. All right, protecting yourself. So foodborne illnesses and pathogens is huge. Salmonella, Shigella, norovirus. You can honestly contract a lot of these from just undercooked food or food that hasn't been prepared by clean hands or clean individuals. So make sure that you're washing your hands, you're washing your surfaces. If you put chicken on a countertop, you're disinfecting that to kill any of the salmonella pathogen that may be there, because this can really affect your gut microbiome. And we know that gut is linked to brain, is linked to health, is linked to immune system. So we want to make sure to keep that nice and healthy. All right, preventing this, again, raw food is a most common source of foodborne illness unless it's prepared properly. So if you go out for sushi, things like that, make sure that that restaurant is preparing things properly so you're not exposing yourself to any foodborne illnesses. Again, clean hands, separate raw and cooked foods. Cook foods at a safe temperature, chill and refrigerate perishables. When you're able to, I've learned that when you cook something, you want it to cool down, and then you want it to go into the fridge before it reaches room temperature, because room temperature is where a lot of those microbes are able to grow. So if you keep it hotter than room temperature or colder than room temperature, then you're pretty good. You want to eliminate the amount of time that that food is sitting at room temperature. All right, environmental contaminants. So there's PCBs, there's metals, there's naturally occurring substances. So make sure you're looking at the source of your food and where you're getting these from. If you do go organic, I recommend doing organic meats and fruits first, because those are the ones that are most often going to be sprayed or utilized in those types of food processes. When it comes to vegetables, bugs don't really like vegetables a whole lot, so you're not really going to see a whole lot of pesticides and herbicides sprayed on vegetables. Grains, you're going to have some herbicides and pesticides sprayed on that as well. So make sure you're paying attention to that and looking at your food sources. All right, organic foods. As of today, they're very loose guidelines. So while I still follow organic guidelines, I would recommend, again, that you research the company and really find what are they saying is organic, because some companies will have one organic ingredient out of the 50 in their product, and they can slap an organic label on it and say it's organic and then charge you an extra $2 for something that's essentially the same as their normal product. So really look at the labeling, look at those ingredient lists and see what is this company actually putting in there and what is actually organic. If you see that there's a whole bunch of organic oxidized something, and know that it's probably lab made and they're just loosely utilizing that term organic to try to get you to buy that product. All right, there's a thing called greenwashing, and I wanted to make sure I put this in. I know that's a long lecture already, but this is important because there's a lot of companies, again, that are utilizing this idea of greenwashing and making it look natural to get individuals to either come pay money for their product or to pay more for their product. So a couple examples are Ajax. Notice how they changed the bottle. It looks a little more natural. It makes you think that it's cleaner and safer when really the ingredients are about the same. When it comes to McDonald's, they changed all their packaging to cardboard packaging. They changed the way that the outside of their buildings look. These companies spend a lot of money to make you think that they're healthier. And in all actuality, they're not actually healthier. So these are some of the labels that companies are able to utilize. And the problem is that the FDA allows the companies to self-regulate and to create their own definition for what organic or what green E or wildlife friendly means. So again, research these companies and vote with your dollar. If you don't agree with what that company is doing, don't purchase their products. Additives in food, there's a lot of different additives in terms of preservatives. MSG is going to be a big one. I know individuals that have personally died from ingesting MSG. There's BHA, there's BHT. There's a lot of additives that are added to the foods because the companies need them to stay on the shelves for as long as possible, or else they're going to start losing money. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, you see a high turnover in the grocery store for those because they generally don't have all these preservatives on it. Anything that's boxed, anything that's processed, anything that's in the center of the store, those are going to be your foods that are going to have a lot of the preservatives in it. And again, can be extremely toxic to the body. So you want to be careful with the products that you're purchasing and choosing to ingest, because they could have these sulfites in it that could create some inflammation and damage in your body. All right, functional foods. There's different types of foods that have added ingredients to try to improve health. Keep in mind that these are lab made. So all in all, we want to make sure that we're making the best possible decision. So if you know you're going to eat that yogurt, you might as well get the yogurt that's infused with something like vitamin E, vitamin C, that you normally wouldn't get in your everyday diet. So it's just trying to make better food choices, not perfect food choices, but better food choices. All right, food irradiation kills potentially harmful pathogens. There's a few irradiated foods on the market due to consumer skepticism. This gets into like the GMO foods, the biotechnology. A lot of this is still uncharted territory in terms of food. So we really don't know how this is going to react. And a lot of individuals, the more technical, the more technology you bring into processing food, the more conservative in terms of them trying it that they're going to become. So there are some sites that improve yields, that support building these food biotechnology processes to try to make food better, because in all actuality our natural food sources are getting diminished. And so we're trying to find other ways to actually create better food that's not going to deplete our natural resources. All right. Companies that are against labeling GMO or labeling their products with GMO labels, it's important to know what companies legislatively are lobbying against these types of labels. And we have to wonder why they're lobbying against these different types of labels. So very popular, Coca-Cola Company, Smucker's, Kellogg's, Sara Lee. You see that a lot of these common products that are in our stores, these are companies that are spending millions of dollars to try to make sure that this labeling does not go through, because then they don't have to tell us if their foods or their products contain certain contaminants or GMOs that maybe we don't want to eat. All right, food allergies. Food allergies and food intolerances is interesting because the more research I look at, the more I find that it's related to chronic levels of inflammation. So for some individuals, they may be allergic to milk, eggs, peanuts, soy, wheat, fish, shellfish. The food intolerances generally don't involve the immune system, but we always have to remember that the body works as a whole system. We can't look at the systems in parts. So while general consensus is that the immune system isn't involved, we can't say that's completely taken out. A lot of it lies with metabolism and how is your body interacting with these different substances that are increasing the toxic load. A lot of the research is going back to toxic load. So if you eat, let's say if you drink milk and you notice that your bowels start to get kind of irritated, that may be one, your gut microbiome isn't healthy, and two, that your toxic load may be too high. Maybe you're in an extremely polluted area, or someone in your household smokes, or you utilize beauty products that have a lot of chemicals in it. Your body's trying to fight all these toxins off, and now that wheat, fish, shellfish, or whatever you ate is just throwing you over the top in terms of allergies. So it's helpful to try to look at your toxic load overall in your body and what you're exposing yourself to, and trying to eliminate some of those things that you absolutely don't need in your everyday practice, and see how your food allergies actually resolve themselves. All right, if you have food allergies, generally your body may be telling you it's inflamed. So different signs and symptoms of chronic inflammation: fatigue, digestive problems, joint pains, headaches, weight gain, allergy symptoms. We know that science is really linking these two things together. So it does actually matter what you eat, because your body is going to react in a certain way. There are certain causes, gut inflammation, leaky gut, where your gut actual wall is not completely together, so there's large particles seeping out into the bloodstream that's causing issues. There's bacteria like H. pylori that could cause some inflammation. Poor immune system, GMO foods, Up to 15% of individuals now have gluten sensitivity. And again, look at your toxic load, look at your beauty products, look at your detergent, look at if you're wearing dark clothes with a lot of dyes in it and your skin's absorbing that dye. There's a lot of things you can look at to see, why is my body so inflamed? And then start pulling things out that you feel that you can pull out and see how your body resolves itself. All right, so as a review, I wanted to put some examples of